So what is mindfulness? Let's talk a little bit about what it is so we can understand what we're working with here. First, I want to explain two different terms that I think often get confused and mixed together. So the first is meditation. And first, I want to demystify what meditation is. I think a lot of people, when they imagine meditation, they think about that monk that's living up in a cave on a hill somewhere, separated from everyone else, who, been meditating all day. I think oftentimes the image is that of the Buddha, right? So somebody who's often meditating all the time, and they're in this blissed out, very peaceful, very transcendent state. And therefore, when people start to practice meditation and they don't get to that feeling, they feel like they've done something wrong or that they've failed. So I first want to clarify what meditation is and therefore what mindfulness is. So meditation is the practice of returning to the present moment. So the goal of meditation isn't that blissed out, peaceful state. The goal of meditation is the practice of returning to the present moment. What I mean by this is that our minds as humans are built to be traveling all around. We're time travelers all the time. Our minds spend a lot of time in the past ruminating or thinking about something that's happened to us before, both positive and negative, but we often tend to ruminate on the things that were challenging. Or we're in the future anticipating something that's coming up, perhaps thinking about what we're going to have for lunch or worrying about something that might happen down the line. And very rarely do we spend time right here in the present moment, being with and experiencing our feelings right now. When we meditate, we train ourselves to return to the present moment. So we train ourselves to catch those moments when we've gone off time traveling or thinking somewhere and come back to the present moment again. So meditation is a dedicated practice, an intentional practice of catching the mind wandering and bringing the mind back to the present, connecting it back in with the body. Often people do this through focusing on the breath, the body, or sounds. And I actually offer a meditation to do just that. But really, it's just this dedicated practice. So an analogy that can be helpful is like going to the gym. So when we go to the gym, it's with the specific intention of building our muscles or getting more physically fit. We go there with that goal in mind. When we're meditating, it's the same thing. When we're sitting on the cushion, we are intentionally building that practice of returning to the present moment. We are intentionally exercising that muscle of awareness of when we are not in the present moment and bringing ourselves back again. That's meditation. Mindfulness is maintaining present moment awareness as we go about our day and live our lives. So we have an awareness of our thoughts, our feelings, our bodily sensations while we're living our lives. So if we were to keep with this physical activity or health analogy, mindfulness is like parking our car a couple blocks away from our office and walking to our office so we can get a little bit of extra exercise in, or taking the stairs rather than the elevator to get to a higher floor in a building. So it's a way of integrating our physical fitness into our daily lives. It's not us going to the gym specifically to practice it, but we're integrating it in, finding other ways to improve our physical health and well-being while living our lives. Mindfulness is the same thing. It's our practice of being aware as we live our regular lives. It's not separated from our regular lives. It's integrated into our regular lives. This is important because this helps us in schools quite a bit, and it gets a little bit back to this why mindfulness thing. But not only is mindfulness an intentional awareness of what's going on around us, we're also intentionally trying to nurture or bring forward positive states of mind like kindness and compassion. In schools, these kinds of feelings of awareness, as well as kindness and compassion, are closely linked to social emotional learning strategies. So in the United States, we have something called SEL, social emotional learning, and it's all about ways that we can bring that kindness, compassion, and awareness into our learning environments. And here are some of the ways that mindfulness connects with that. So mindfulness brings forward and supports us to have self-awareness and self-management. It helps us to have social awareness, so awareness of others. It helps us to have improved relationship skills. and it helps us make responsible decision making. So these are other ways that when we cultivate this in our lives, practice of being aware and being kind and compassionate, it has all these rewards for our interactions with others. So you can imagine at a school why this might be positive and something that we want to bring forward. I believe that mindfulness begins with self-care. So we had that Audre Lorde quote a few minutes ago when we talked about why mindfulness and why is it important. And I want to bring this forward again, and you'll hear it quite a bit, but I believe that being able to cultivate mindfulness starts with a willingness to take care of ourselves. And I define self-care as showing genuine care and concern for ourselves, treating ourselves like we would a loved one. So for us to start practicing mindfulness, we need to also start practicing care for ourselves, being willing to take care of ourselves. So here's why that's important. I think that mindfulness and self-care, when you bring them together, it does something really important and really powerful for us as educators. It increases our self-awareness. Here's why that matters. So when we're self-aware, we are able to have deeper relationships. We have deeper relationships with ourselves. So when we have increased self-awareness, especially when we meet that with care and compassion rather than judgment, we have a better sense of ourselves. And actually knowing ourselves better, even knowing the parts of ourselves that we're not so proud of, actually leads to increased happiness, clarity, and emotional intelligence. So just knowing ourselves better, being curious, being connected with ourselves helps us to feel better. That's for the self. Self-awareness also supports deeper relationships with others. So when we're self-aware, we are automatically and naturally more aware of others. And that self-awareness helps us to be more regulated and grounded as educators. So if I imagine this in the school setting, a self-aware teacher is more regulated and grounded. When they're more aware, when they're more confident and comfortable and calm, they actually create a setting within our classroom environments where kids can also feel like they are safer and they can support and they can show up as themselves more. So self-aware and regulated teachers actually create self-aware and regulated kids in classrooms. And we'll talk about how that is true in a little bit. This is a study that comes out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It's a few years old, but it studied the impact of a group of teachers who practiced what's called mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's a kind of mindfulness practice, often paraphrased as MBSR. It's basically practicing mindfulness. They did a study on the impact of teachers who practiced mindfulness. And this is what they found. They found a reduction in burnout and symptoms of psychological distress. So if you remember what we just spoke about as we started our talk together, teachers are burned out. So practicing mindfulness helped to reduce that. Very important. Mindful teachers also had improved classroom organization. So their classrooms felt cleaner, easier. Their day was more organized. They had more effective teaching behaviors. So they were able to be more effective as teachers just by practicing mindfulness. No changes to their instructional strategies overtly, but because of practicing mindfulness, they automatically became more effective teachers. And they also had increased self-compassion. So they had an increased sense of care and well-being for themselves.